Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Some guy said big and hairy. It's like, no. Big and furry. Yeah, forget it. Joining me is Bronk, and anybody else who wants to join, just go to the YouTube, look at the show description, the link's there, click, and bingo, bango, you're in the studio. Yep, you're in. We are we're really easy, like Sunday morning.
Yes.
Before I get off to begin the program today, I want to wish Nick Chubb the very best in his surgery. Obviously, we're not going to know. I can tell you what I expect. What I expect is a damaged MCL and a damaged ACL, not a completely torn ACL, but a significant enough tear that they would have to go ahead and do the surgery for both of those ligaments, and that it will be the normal 6 to 8 month kind of thing. And knowing Nick Chubb, he's going to work like a dog trying to get back from this. I like to think this is not career ending. There is no discussion of a displaced kneecap or a patellar tendon or anything else that could have gotten blown out in the hit. So best of luck to Nick Chubb, and I hope that he comes back full bore for us next year. At the same time, I made a promise to my viewers, and I said that I would not talk about Baker Mayfield until he is relevant in Cleveland sports. And and you didn't hear me.
So what happened?
No, I'm just saying you didn't hear me. No, you didn't hear me going off on Baker when he had a bad day. He started out 2-0. He had a rough time of it, and you didn't hear me on doing this teeter-totter back and forth boomerang kind of thing with Baker. In my mind, we have a situation here where Deshaun Watson is questionable for the Ravens game because of an unnamed shoulder injury, but says, I'm okay, I'll play. Does this sound eerily familiar to you?
Sounds absolutely familiar, like the last 2 seasons of Baker Mayfield in Cleveland.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not comparing Deshaun Watson to Baker Mayfield, but what I'm saying is when Baker Mayfield initially hurt his shoulder, they kind of said, well,
he's all right.
Yeah.
He's going to live. Yeah.
And we expect him to play. And this is exactly what Stefanski and the Browns brass has been saying. Alex Van Pelt actually came out and said, I expect him to be out there. And based on his career, with the exception of the surgery he had, he's never missed a game due to an injury. So Deshaun Watson takes this very seriously, as all football players do. And Baker Mayfield did too. But the next thing you know, whatever the injury was that Baker had ended up turning into a shoulder separation because it got worse. And then they had to put that crazy contraption on him, and he was never the same after that.
He still isn't.
And something, I've been thinking this over. I see Gentleman Swag saying that Watson has to play these games count. This isn't the preseason to go ahead and take a rest on the bye week. I'm going to disagree. And the reason is I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Once it's announced that he has some kind of a shoulder injury, what do you think the Ravens are going to do?
There's a gigantic target on him now, and they're going to aim right for the particular spot where he's hurt.
Rush him from the left side of the field and hit him as he's following through, and you have a major problem on your hands worth $250 million.
$1 million.
So now, do I want DTR to play? Well,
not really.
No, not really. I mean, no. I don't think that I don't want to measure DTR's value of the team just for the sake of, he's going to play sooner or later, which is probably the case because it's true with every quarterback in the league that the backup will eventually get into the game. I'm not wishing that he plays, but what I'm saying is we do have a bye week coming up, and this could be the difference between an injury that is avoidable or an injury which we allowed to get worse against a divisional opponent.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt in my mind that the Ravens will go after him, just like the Steelers would. And, and that's right, Radu. And that is part of the problem that we have is the pass protection hasn't been completely holy, or maybe it's holy in a different way than we would like it to be. So my immediate instinct is to say, if you've got a bye week coming up and you've got a guy with a sore shoulder, well, then you can give him 2 weeks and he can come back, and maybe the team with its defense can keep up with the Ravens. Is it likely? Yeah. No. Is it likely a loss? Yes, under that circumstance. But I can't tell you whether the Browns win with Deshaun Watson or if they don't. I can't pick a favorite in a game like this because every prediction shows it going one way or another, like all the Browns games have in the betting circles, these low scoring 20-17 kind of games.
Yeah.
And now the fact that we took the Titans out, that's wonderful, but this ain't the Titans. The Ravens are not the Titans, and they will and they will find a way to put pressure on Deshaun Watson and to go after him. So if we do have to play DTR, and I'm playing this out in my own head, let's talk about why I think it could still end up in a Browns victory. Okay. And I know that you're going to say you're crazy, Mr. Moohead.
Well,
but, yeah. Here's the first thing. Jameson Hensley reports Odell Beckham Jr.'s out. What a big surprise. Rashad Bateman, the other wide receiver, is out. Yeah, Marlon Humphrey, the cornerback, is out.
Yeah.
The 2 linebackers, Ojabo and Owe, are out. The offensive tackle, Ronnie Stanley, is doubtful. And questionable are Hamilton, who will play.
He's a great player. He is good.
And Kyle Hamilton will play. Tyler Linderbaum, who's moved himself up to questionable 50-50 status, he's their center, and they need him for the running game. And, yeah, you bet he'll play.
He'll play.
Marcus Williams, the safety, will play, and Justice Hill, the running back, may or may not. All right?
Right.
But here's the reason why this is of interest to me. One, the talk about Kyle Hamilton being a really good player is because of the way the Ravens play defense. And I have been researching this, and if we've been hearing about, Jadeveon Clowney and now picking up his game now that he's with the Ravens. He's only had 1.5 sacks, but he's gotten into the backfield and had tackles for losses and all of that good stuff. But the thing about Kyle Hamilton at 6'4", 220 pounds, the guys who are on the defensive line for the Ravens are taking up space and getting past and around their man, and they're keeping Kyle Hamilton very often in a position where he is almost like halfway between pass coverage and the line of scrimmage, and he very often is the cleanup guy. He's the guy.
He's like the guy in Tecmo in football where you control the middle linebacker sort of guy. Remember in the old Let games? Yeah. He was the spare defender.
And if the play is in front of him, he will blow it up. He's physical, he's a hard hitter, and he's got size. All right? Think of like when you see Koromoa getting into the backfield. It's that kind of a situation. Here's the problem for the Ravens. There are two linebackers who are the guys who really, the outside linebackers are out. Yeah. So they're going to be people who have to step in for them. The other thing is the linebackers. There are two linebackers on the Ravens team. One is, and I'm going by memory here, is Queen, who has played well this year. Yeah. And who's the other one? The guy who's the best linebacker on the team?
Roquan Smith, the guy who
Roquan Smith, the guy who shot his mouth off. Right.
From the Bears.
Right. So those two guys provide all the attention an offensive line and running back could possibly look at. They also are tremendous as far as running down plays in front of them and stopping runners at the line of scrimmage or behind the line. And you have Clowney, who's very good at that. But it's Kyle Hamilton who makes the big hits. He's kind of like what Troy Polamalu was for the Steelers. That kind of a very physical safety. That's the kind of guy he is. Now, why is this significant? Because there's a way to neutralize Kyle Hamilton if you use your offensive smarts. And that is to make him chase from behind or to back up. If you let him in a position where he can just blow up a play in front of him, you're in deep shit. Here's how the Browns should attack and have, according to sources, been thinking about attacking the Ravens defense. And that is with a 5-wide alignment. And the 5-wide is an interesting one because it isn't designed for big plays, in which case either quarterback can throw out patterns. Yeah. It happens to be Deshaun Watson's most high percentage completion is outside the numbers, not inside the numbers. And it's something that Kevin Stefanski will coach toward that strength. From a rookie quarterback's perspective, it would give him a chance to get rid of the ball quickly rather than having to stay in the pocket and read. Because going through progressions against a team that plays as fast and physically as the Ravens do would not be easy for any quarterback, let alone a rookie quarterback. The idea here is that your receivers go out and immediately cut toward the sidelines, and it forces Kyle Hamilton into man-to-man coverage if he is going to play up on the line. This is hugely important because if he decides to go one way, you just throw the ball out and you get 7, 8, 9 yards. Yeah. All right. And you just keep attacking it that way. The other thing is if you get him by running him across the field, in other words, if you have a 5-wide out alignment and one of those guys takes the safety with him and drags him over the middle, immediately you're forcing him to play east-west and not north-south. And the weakness in Kyle Hamilton is his speed. He's got tremendous length and tremendous physicality. However, if you run a pattern over the middle of the field and turn it upfield, he's chasing you, and that's what you want Kyle Hamilton to do. Now, when you play a 5-wide alignment, the implication is your offensive line had better block. And I know with Jedrick Wills, all bets are off. There you go.
I love you, Jedrick.
I love you, Jedrick. I do. The bottom line is when you take away one player, you leave yourself open in another area, and that's to the pass rush. Now, my feeling about the pass rush, Roquan Smith is dangerous as hell. And I'm not going to say that Clowney is dangerous as hell, but he's motivated to show that he is in this game. And
yeah, but he's not the hardest worker in the world. I mean,
well, he will be this week because he needs to be because of the revenge game factor. But the
we'll
whole thing, but the thing is that we know from experience that he pissed and moaned about not ever having the favorable matchup. And if you look at what the Browns are doing right now by moving Myles Garrett all over the line of scrimmage, they are forcing defenses, rather than lining up Myles Garrett in front of a weaker defender, they're moving him all over the place in the middle of plays back and forth off the line. They don't know which way he's attacking from. And how they man up against him is going to be very difficult for the Ravens. And that's what, we never did with our previous Joe Woods moron.
Joe didn't want to piss off anybody on the defense. And in the end, he ended up pissing everybody off. So, he wasn't strong enough. He wasn't strong-willed.
And Clowney, for his part, said, well, I want to be the guy who's rushing against the weaker guy. When the reality is we should be switching things around, keeping teams guessing so that there will be opportunities for other people. And we've seen that this year. Other members of the interior line and Zadarius Smith, the fact that Zadarius Smith has had a number of runs at the quarterback and the guy slipped him and then somebody else has sacked him. But Zadarius has been living in the backfield. The entire defensive line has been living in the backfield, which is something we haven't seen in Cleveland since Michael Dean Perry. It's been a lot. Jameer Miller, maybe. Is that his name? Jameer Miller? Was that?
Miller. Yeah, that guy.
The guy from Arizona that we had for a year or two. We haven't had anybody living in the backfield. So the Ravens have a big problem. And that problem is our defense getting into the backfield. And it isn't so much rushing Lamar Jackson. The issue from our perspective getting into the backfield is containing him and really forcing him to throw and forcing him to beat us through the air. Their issue is they want to stifle us at the line of scrimmage, take away our running game, and then if we look down the middle of the field, that's where their linebackers live, and that's where their safety will live and patrol, and that's how they get things done. So it all starts with weakening Kyle Hamilton and making him do the things that he does the worst and take away that big play guy who blows things up. And to do that, you got to count on some of your other guys.
Okay, so we play 5 wide, then they can't have all these linebackers playing. They have to have dime packages in. So who are they going to take out? Are they going to take out Roquan Smith? Are they going to take out Queen?
Queen will come out. Roquan won't come out.
Yeah, exactly.
They need the pass rush ability.
You know what's going to happen if we're spread on the offensive line as well. There's going to be gaps opening up for Deshaun to run for first downs. Like maybe get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, but with an injured shoulder, we don't want that. If it's DTR, again. What I'm pointing out is the point. Yeah, the point being that it could be your backup quarterback playing. And the reason that this strategy makes sense is that it would help him make faster decisions and to be able to look at shorter outside routes. If they try to jump patterns, which is a possibility, but with Marlon Humphrey out, and and Marcus Williams questionable, all it takes is one tweak here and there and somebody else gets hurt. You might find something down the field if they start biting down too hard. The thing is that this takes away the Cleveland Browns running game. But what it does is it might take Jerome Ford into more of a pass catching mode. I don't know that we're going to see Kareem Hunt. He played 14 plays for the line of scrimmage in the last game, and he's hurt his groin as well as his ribs. And, that's just from non-contact. He hasn't
played.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So, these are all things that I look at from an analytical perspective, and I don't mean analytics statistically, but it's the eye test. What
from
does
a tactical perspective you want?
That's right. And
tactical.
you got to force your opponents. I mean, these people will come at you like beasts and try to rip you to shreds. That's the Steelers. That's the Ravens. We are developing a reputation on our defense, which the national media is starting to see, but not wanting to admit, and other players laughing about still, like Roquan Smith saying, well, 4 weeks in, you can't say that they're the best defense. And I'm not saying we're the best defense.
Can't. Yeah, and he's right.
It's a 17-game thing. And if he wants to, whatever it was he said, he wants to, break into the Browns' house, where their wives and children are, whatever it was he said, I think has been played up by the Cleveland media. I watched the whole thing, and he was smiling and laughing through some of it.
It's a football guy. Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, if you can put a thought into the perennially weak-minded team and remind them who's boss, that's what that's all about. Yeah. And for their part, what the Browns players are saying is, we've heard this before, and they're just going to have to find out about what we're about. And it's like two teams going to go at it, and that's what it always comes down to in the AFC North. So the interesting part is the running yards are going to be probably gained mostly by Lamar Jackson, and whether it's Justice Hill that plays or Gus Williams, Gus Williams is is that his name? Is their primary running. Gus Edwards. That's his name. Yeah, he's their
that's a ticket.
He's primary guy. 4.5, 4.3 yards a carry kind of guy, and he's coming off a concussion, but he's been a full participant as far as practices, the last two practices. So, we're going to see him, and, Harbaugh will try to move the ball on the ground because you've seen what happens. Hey, El Presidente, where in the hell have you been, man? Where in the hell have you been? You should be clicking on that link and coming into the studio. El Presidente. Well, you know. Yeah, El Presidente should be on the panel too. So, if you go over to YouTube and you click on the link, we'd love to have you. I'm just pointing out things that if you see that the Browns make a decision not to play Deshaun Watson because his shoulder is sore and he can't make all of the requisite throws, just understand that there is an offensive strategy that is being discussed in their building that might help DTR out a little. And the fact that it's a home game, because you'd hate to put a rookie quarterback in his first experience on the road. That is a real tough thing. So from an analytical perspective, that's that. The Browns injury report, everybody on the 53-man roster practiced on Thursday, but that's a little bit sticky because we know that Deshaun Watson just did what they call light throwing, which was like underhand probably. And because they're not going to let him, make it worse in practice. But Greg Newsome, of course, will be back, and that's good news. Joel Bitonio has been limited with an ankle, but you know him. He'll be out on the field.
He's been he must be hurt because he's looked as bad as any of the offensive linemen have looked over, if you average it out over the last 3 games. And no one talks about it because he's a god and he's an all-pro and no one's critical of him. But he hasn't been that good.
Right. Now,
So
David, they blitz with Kyle Hamilton, then great. Then you have immediate outlets with 5 wide
yeah,
linemen.
Watson should be able to shirk him anyway. So
And even if he can't shirk him, even if it's DTR, he can throw the ball out in the flats 6 yards down the field, and his man will not be covered. They're going to have to try to cover wide receivers and with linebackers.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
luck. And that changes the way, functionally, the way that the Ravens would be playing defense. Kareem Hunt also limited with ribs and groin. And, of course, Deshaun, his throwing shoulder. But other than that, I think the key to the Cleveland defense in this game is not getting all focused on Lamar Jackson and his athleticism. I think in the past, what has happened with the Browns is they want to get him. They want to get him. They want to get him.
Yeah.
And, what you want to do is get him in a phone booth where he feels like, okay, they're not going to sack me immediately, but it's impending, and I better get rid of the goddamn ball. And you do it with pressure from your defensive line. And that way, your man-to-man coverage is solid on a couple of backup wide receivers that they will have on the field. And then your safeties come into play, Juan Thornhill, and those guys have to do a job to stop Andrews because it's his favorite target, will always be his favorite target, and a guy who has really hurt the Browns in previous seasons.
Well, this is Grant Delpit's game to show whether he's an all-pro safety or not. So he's got to have a big game, and he's
17 games to prove that, I think. But there's no doubt that Delpit and Koromoa have been very pleasant surprises. And we were wondering last year, like, who are these guys and why aren't they? We suspected it might be Joe Woods. Sure enough. This has to be one of the more interesting names. Jeffrey, the half-human girl. Dan Orlovsky was the guy that walked out of the back of the end zone, right? Highly respected opinion. I don't know what the I see what David up here, and that's based on this. So the Ravens will get blown out if they try to come out and run on the Browns. The fact of the matter is, this is the way Harbaugh wins. This is the way the Steelers would normally win, but they won this last time based upon getting 2 touchdowns off turnovers where the offense never even had to come out on the field. And that is the kind of thing that leads to one kind of victory. If they come out and try to run on the Browns, it's going to be a physical battle. If they depend on Lamar Jackson beating us, not with his legs, but with the forward pass, if he can pull it off, that he's every bit as good as the invisible Joe Shipley says he is. But I still live and die by the fact that the guy's overrated. He can prove me completely wrong today. And I'll admit I'm wrong. If he comes out and throws for 340 yards and kicks our ass all over the field, then I'm going to say, well, I was wrong about this. And Todd Monken, he's working on an offensive plan that includes more throwing down the field. And they say it hasn't meshed yet. And the statistics would bear out that it hasn't meshed yet. But if it does come together, ours came together last week. If theirs comes together this weekend, then, then I'm going to have to say, hey, I'm wrong about that and move on.
Now wait a minute. Let's rewind slightly. Todd Monken. Now, he was the moron that was our offensive coordinator for a while. Then he goes to Georgia, and Georgia wins a national championship.
Right.
So suddenly he's not a moron anymore. I call bullshit on that. I think he's still a moron. Georgia's got far and away 5-star talent all the way through their roster. And if the Ravens are running their offense, I can't see them winning this game.
Harbaugh is still running the offense, just like Stefanski is. The MOs of the team haven't radically changed. And the last game that the Ravens lost, I mean, Lamar Jackson ran for 101 yards.
Yeah,
They
got beat by the
are
fucking
still
Colts.
relying on him to do that.
Hmm.
So I guess the way I look at the Ravens is until they prove to me that there's this throwing offense, and if they can do this new great Todd Monken throwing offense with Bateman off the field and Beckham off the field, then God bless them. Then they've really accomplished something, will deserve big time credit. So, I'm not going to belittle anybody at this point. It's put up or shut up. And if you're Lamar Jackson, instead of talking about being a billionaire and this and that, we know how athletic he is, but you got to make some big plays with your arm. And that's what people are waiting for.
Do they still have Chet Huntley and David Brinkley as their backup, that Huntley guy? Because
Huntley,
he gave us trouble when he played against us when the odd times when Lamar wouldn't be playing.
Well, there's a reason for that. You have an idiotic defensive coordinator back then, and he was just throwing everything quick. He was getting rid of everything quick.
Yeah, he was Brissett everything. He's Jacoby Brissetting.
Except that he's better on his feet and with his legs than Jacoby was. That's right.
Yeah.
And, Zay Flowers, a guy who, a lot of their hopes lie with. He's gotten off to a great start as a rookie. And, and his speed is something that you have to account for. If there's a big play down the field, one of two things will have happened. One is breaking of containment by Lamar Jackson, somebody taking their eye off their man and a guy getting behind him, which we've seen happen before, or it'll be the speed of Zay Flower. And you have to really, he's a rookie. And the bottom line is, if you've been covering Jamar Chase, if you could effectively stop that, you should be able to stop Zay Flower. We'll see. Again, this is all prove it time for both teams. Both teams have the same record and we're fighting for the same prize. Terry Pluto's headline just kills me. Here come the Ravens. Will the Browns be the same old Browns, or is this a new era? Yeah.
Is he going to write the same old shit, or is he going to write something new? Let's ask him that.
It's so tired. It's such a tired thing. How can you make it more clear to somebody? Every week is an opportunity to show advancement.
Yes, improvement.
And that is what it is. And what happened last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, matters when idiotic reporters keep trying to remind players of that, because that's what they want to have happen. So they have more easy things to write about. The bottom line is, if you're a fan of the Browns, what you're hoping for is that the defense maintains its identity and that we have the right game plan to affect the Ravens. I want to point something out, and this is good a time as any to say this, because it's the absolute truth. I'm a Browns fan. A lot of people would say, what are you, crazy? Why are you a Browns fan? I can quickly answer that question for people who would ask it. I mean, it's obvious. I was raised in Canton in Northeast Ohio. So that was a team I was acquainted with from the time I was 8 years old in 1965, and the end of Jim Brown's era, and listening to games on the radio with Jim Grainer calling the games in my father's beauty shop while he did my mom's hair on Sunday. Seriously, was how I first started listening to the Cleveland Browns. And then, of course, it became, watching them, and, it became kind of like an ongoing thing. But why now, after all the disappointment, why am I still a Cleveland Browns fan? And it's what I've learned. And it was the basis of my decision to come back to live half the year in Ohio. And I'm not going to say this will make sense to people, because I'm talking to a lot of people who are a lot younger than I am, who haven't had the same life experience, and you'll have your own path. My path told me that roots become a very important part of your existence as you get on in years. And I was a traveling radio circus in my life. I was a gypsy, and going from town to town as a general manager of radio properties, a gun for hire, if you will, to different markets around the country, and then into ownership in Illinois and in Michigan and in upstate New York, and then retiring in Florida to be closer to my mother and father. And my mother got sick, and I was too young basically to be in Florida, but the fact is I wanted to be closer to my family, and it was a tough time for my dad. And in the end of March, I lost my father this year. And that gets you thinking about certain things too. And I looked at my life and I said, there are a lot of people who I worked with and who worked with me, and we communicate on social media. But there are a bunch of people in Northeast Ohio who I went to school with, people who I knew, that reattaching, to some of those people and getting back together and reliving some memories, that's like the other bookend of my life. It was leaving Ohio to find what it was I loved to do professionally, but it's coming back and understanding how important my time in Ohio really was. And those roots grow deep. And part of those roots are the Cleveland Browns. It's the reason why, hey, when I had a decision to make, when I was having all kinds of, problems health-wise in the early 2000s, just because of life circumstances, a misprescribed medication, sleep problems, things of that nature, that I decided I better do something. I better have a hobby. And I said to myself, how do I can do something that I know how to do. And I know how to set up a studio. I know how to broadcast. And I love sports, and I love Northeast Ohio sports. So that gave me the idea that every day I would do a podcast. And it was 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single day of the year. And that was like that for many, many years. And then also, as things became a little bit more sophisticated with bandwidth on the internet, then it became halftime and post-game shows as well. And I was spending a lot of time on this hobby, and it wasn't for financial reasons, and I repeat that over and over again. But I was, without even knowing it, I was holding on to some roots, and I was a rootless person. I was a person who had left the place that I grew up. And from the time, I want to say 1960 until 1985 when I left, that's 25 years I was in Canton, Ohio. Mm-hmm. That's a long time. And I've been in Florida for 23 years. All right. And I don't feel any closeness with the constant churn of people coming and going in Florida. When I came up here and, decided on purchasing a home and driving the area, everything came back to me. All the things that I remembered, going back to my old neighborhood, and it looked the same as it looked. It wasn't like things had changed radically. And seeing what had changed, and then driving through Akron and driving through the suburbs, and it was like, I remember all this stuff. And then having lunch with people and dinner with people who I went to school with, who I haven't seen. God, And what now? I'm I'm 66, so you figure it out. 40 plus years, and sitting down at a table and breaking bread with them. That is a roots experience. That's why I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, because this is the happiest that I have been and the most at peace that I've been in a long, long time. And when I read, to put this all together with a nice little bow, an idiot like Terry Pluto saying, is this going to be the same old Browns? I don't care if it's the same old Browns, if it's the brand new Browns. This is part of my life and is part of the glue that keeps and holds me together. And I don't want to look at it as something that I whine about. It's something I embrace. So I wish people would just shut the fuck up. That's why I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. We talked a little bit about Roquan Smith's going over there to beat their tails in front of their wife and kids. Look, that's all well and good. Teams will use locker room, they'll put it up in the locker room as fodder, to get revved up. Nobody needs to get revved up for this game. Everybody knows that these are the two best teams in the division. And I'm not slighting Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has crept into a 2-1 position, but not because of anything their offense has done. And the Ravens of the Browns right now are the class of the division. And I want to point out one other thing too about DTR versus Deshaun Watson. If the Cincinnati Bengals knew that Joe Burrow was Hopalong Cassidy and that his calf had not healed, and if they had sat him in the first week and they'd have lost against the Browns anyway, which they did anyway, the difference is that he hurt it worse.
Yep.
And he's played like shit this year because he didn't let his body heal.
Yep.
Pay attention to what's happening around you and say to yourself, it isn't worth, one game can't be worth a guy hurting himself worse, who we need. And we are going in, it's going to be bad enough. You have to understand, we're going in, week 5 is our bye week. That means there's going to be 13 more fucking weeks of the season, and we're going to have to play those weeks without a break.
Yeah.
There's going to be injuries left and right. So an early bye is like the worst thing you could hope for. So at least use it for something. Because if you end up getting him hurt and he's not healed by after the bye, then there's no time for him. He's just going to keep getting re-hurt over and over and over again. And that's what's happening to Burrow. They've turned a simple soft tissue injury into something far worse. We don't want to do that with Deshaun Watson's shoulder. But I have nothing against Roquan Smith. I think he's a really fine football player.
I wish we drafted him. He's a great player.
Yeah. And, he went to a team that he would play really, really well for, because that Ravens and linebackers are synonymous. Yeah. I think that's the thing. For me personally, 5 wide gives you an opportunity to have David Bell on the field. It gives you an opportunity to have Elijah Moore on the field. It gives you an opportunity to have Cedric Tillman on the field, or that you could even put Njoku on the field as a guy who's big and would be able to go up against maybe a linebacker if they're forced to go that way. It gives you many different ways to attack. All right. So we'll see if they actually employ the 5 wide, or if they're going to fall back into Stefanski's typical,
under center guy behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Formation, whatever.
Yeah. Obviously the other thing is, if you're thinking you're going to beat the Ravens up the gut, guess again, those linebackers will plug the holes because they're coming anyway, and their defensive line is good enough to stop that. If you're going to beat them, You got to get outside. And I would just as soon do it with swing passes as running slow sweeps. Because the slow sweep allows Kyle Hamilton to come up the line of scrimmage and jar the ball loose. So, that's how I feel about that.
Well, if we are going to run inside, then let's have Harrison Bryant or somebody be a fullback that can block for the guy running behind, whether that's Ford or Moore or
Well, we're
Hunt or
seeing
whoever.
Harris as a lead blocker in a jumbo
Nick
formation.
Harris, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we haven't seen that since there's been some jumbo formations, but it was Michael Dean Perry and Mike Ditka who invented that whole concept of the jumbo. And so Nick Harris is our jumbo guy, and he's done a nice job. And he's clears out what he needs to clear out in front of him, and that is a big to do. As far as I'm not going to sit here and say that there is a way to control Lamar Jackson. You have to take the big play away from his legs and make him do it with his arm. And if he does, you tip your cap to him. That's the easiest way that I can put it. All right. Now, before I get into predictions and all of that, watching the game, the Thursday night football game.
Oh, God.
Boy, the Packers just didn't show up at the beginning of the game.
No.
You can't afford slow starts like that. And, you can say that one team is grieving over the loss of Aaron Rodgers. I think there's two teams that are actually, they might want to make Jordan Love into something that he's not at this point in his career. But, boy, they were all over him. And they had no answers whatsoever.
Well, they've had some really good draft lines, and that Hutchinson's top player. I mean,
they're playing well this year, and when they came in there and just ripped them to shreds the first half of that game, that said a hell of a lot, and lots of credit, because that organization would be the other one that Terry Pluto would love to write about because of past problems.
Yeah, they went into Arrowhead or whatever that's called now and beat the Chiefs, and now they go into Lambeau and beat the Packers. You got to consider them as a legitimate, NFC champion, division champion sort of team, really. They do stuff like that.
Now, here's what they're saying around the internet as far as predictions for the game.
Oh, God.
We start with the Opta Analyst, which is theanalyst.com, predicting the Browns will win 23-17. They're saying that the projected total of wins for the Browns would be 10 this year, 9.3 for the Ravens. And the chance of making the playoffs would be like 70.7% for the Browns, but their chance of winning the Super Bowl, of course, only 1.5%. So the analyst.com thinks the Browns are going to win. Now, Sports Illustrated is predicting the Browns are going to win 19-17. If you take a look at these scores, you're going to get the same vibe that you did in Steeler Week, which is
it's an easy thing to say, low scoring, close game. I mean, duh, anybody can fucking say that. It's just how it is,
Now, Sports Illustrated is saying 19-17, and so it's a defensive game. NFL.com had a bunch of people picking, and out of 5 people, 3 of them chose the Ravens. But the 3 who chose the Ravens said 22-20, 21-20, and 20-17. And the people who chose the Browns said 21-19 and 21-13. The question about the Ravens is, can they score enough points with Lamar Jackson as quarterback? And the question about the Browns at this point is, can they hold them down like they've held other teams down, so that 20 points, 21, 24 points is enough to win, because we haven't hit the magic 3-0 at this point yet. CBS Sports, My man Pete Prisco is picking the Browns 24-16. Again, these are all offense starved kinds of circumstances.
Scores, yeah.
Now, what we will say is this: now that I'm living in Northeast Ohio, we're going to have an Indian summer up here. So we're looking at 75 degrees tomorrow and 79 degrees
Wow.
on Sunday. So that is significant that we're going to be playing this game in balmy weather, and there's a low chance of precipitation. So there's every opportunity to pass the football here. This is not going to be a mud bowl. So, that's what that is. So that's who CBS Sports is picking the Browns to win 24-16. The sporting news is picking the Ravens 22-21. And it's based on history. Lamar Jackson is 6-1 against the Browns as a starter. And the one he lost, he left with an ankle injury in the game. So he's never lost healthy to the Cleveland Browns. That's what that's about. The reason the game's close, according to the people at the Sporting News, is the defense, which is first in the league in total defense and points per game. But again, these are the types of games, just like the Pittsburgh game, you either find a way to win or the other team finds a way to win. It isn't just going to be laid out on paper. And for the Steelers, it was 2 massive turnovers that they were able to convert into immediate points. Yeah. And it's going to come down to who makes those types of plays, either big plays that are pass plays or big defensive plays that shorten the field that allow for touchdowns.
Well, and that, just to get back to that Steeler game, there were 2 other turnovers that were significant, and also the non-call on the face mask on Deshaun Watson, where that drive got killed too. So there were a lot of drive-killing plays in that game that wouldn't happen in normal games.
Right.
That 4th down fumble that got called against us and all that other shit. So, is it time for my prediction?
Well, we still have Bleacher Report. Out of 6 people, 4 taking the Browns, 2 taking the Ravens. So that's what that is. So go ahead.
I'm going to say that the only thing I'm pretty certain about is that the Browns defense is going to have a good game, and that the Ravens, not Raiders. The Ravens will not score more than 13 points. Now, whether the Browns offense has a good game, that I don't know. So I'm going to give you 2 scores. I'm going to give you one score that says the Ravens 13, the Browns 12. And I'm going to give you another score that says Browns 34, Ravens 13. And I think that if the Browns can score quickly and make Harbaugh panic, and we know Harbaugh can panic, and try to get Lamar Jackson throwing the ball downfield, and we get interceptions, then we're going to have a blowout. And that, there has been a time when we have blown out the Ravens in Cleveland. That's within living memory. So it's either going to be
the time Baker Mayfield did it, we put an early hurt on him.
Exactly.
If you can get them behind in the beginning of a game, the longer they're in a game, it's like the Steelers. They will find a way because their coach and their history tells them that they have done it before and they will do it again.
You get Harbaugh panic though, and it's a different story.
You get a lead on them and make them play from behind. That takes away their running game, and it forces Lamar Jackson to beat you with his arm. And that is, it's different. The Bengals, when Joe Burrow is healthy, it can hurt you down the field. As of yet, Lamar Jackson really hasn't proven that he can do that on a consistent level. So,
no.
As far as my predictions in this, and that my predictions don't mean shit because I picked them to lose to the Texans, not the Texans, to the
Titans. Wow.
Titans, yeah. Jesus.
Speaking of the Texans, I think the Texans will have a good game against the Steelers. Don't sleep on them, man.
Well, CJ Stroud is having a good season. The problem is, again, the Texans aren't going to be ready for the physicality of the Steelers. And, we'll see how that plays out too. I'm, I'm kind of torn on what the final score could be in a game like this. This is a home game, and there's going to be a lot of mojo and energy, and there's going to be a lot of resistance by the Ravens to prevent the Browns from getting off to that fast start. And we're not even 100% sure that Deshaun Watson is going to be the starting quarterback. You almost have to have two scenarios. If DTR is forced to play because that shoulder, if either before the game it won't loosen up or during the game he gets hurt, that's going to lower the Browns' point total, and it becomes incumbent upon the defense then to keep the game low scoring. In which case, if the Browns could piece together something in the realm of 16 points and hold the Ravens to 13, that would be the kind of score that would require for the Browns to win. If Deshaun Watson is able to play the game, they protect him, they use the 5 wide out appropriately, get the ball out of his hands so that he's not taking late shots. There is reason to believe the Browns could score 27 points in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And
easily.
And I could see a situation 27-17, somewhere in that range, 27-20, somewhere in that range. I'm picking the Browns to win this game in either event because they have a bye week to look forward to. And I think that things are starting to roll their way. And if they can get one of these divisional teams, they've beaten Cincinnati at home. If they can beat Baltimore at home, then we know that we've taken 2 games away for the people who were supposed to be the strongest in the division.
Yeah.
So that becomes real important.
Tiebreakers mean everything.
All right, everybody. I've spoken my piece, and we'll be right here on Sunday, halftime and post-game shows. And, as for Amsterdam, I never like to see anybody die. Dianne Feinstein, I have a problem with the whole way that corporate America and whatever it is who are, I guess one guy called them the Illuminati, are putting in mentally impaired people into leadership positions in our government. And I mean Joe Biden, I mean Donald Trump, Dianne Feinstein was another one. People who are not mentally don't have the acuity to do the job. And yes, Donald Trump is losing his edge. He's making a tremendous number of blunders, just like Biden is, which happens with age. I think that they love, whoever they are, having people in control in the White House who do nothing so that they get their way. I mean, for Trump alone, it's such an ego trip. You have no idea. And for Biden, it's just money, money, money. It's the same thing that made him stay in the Senate for such a long time. That guy will never give up his position anywhere because he's a greedy son of a bitch. And he doesn't care about you. And he doesn't care about me any more than Donald Trump does, any more than Ron DeSantis does, any more than Kamala Harris does. They don't care about us. All right. I've spoken my piece. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
One last request. It's totally off the topic, but you gotta have Peter Alice had to been looking down in heaven on the Ryder Cup today, and had something to say about that. I don't know whether you followed it, but
America
America did not win a single.
Yeah, I saw the headline.
Today. So they're like down 6-5 to 1-5.
Oh, the red, white, and blue is mighty blue today. Oh, I guess blue being the main expression, they blew the camel. Oh, it was an awful, awful thing to see. But not for me. I always sound like this. If I were getting a blowjob, I'd go, oh, yeah. All right, let's get out of here. It's 1 after 6, and it's time for me to motor on. Ohio State's going to beat Rutgers. Don't worry about it.
No, we have a bye week. It's a bye week this week.
Oh, they don't have Rutgers until the next week?
Yeah, I think they have the week off this week.
Well, but that's something to wait for if you want to see a run-up score. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll be back with you on Sunday at the half. Until then, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.